pro wrestling fans? Welcome back to another edition of the official NJPW English Podcast. My name is Walker Stewart, alongside my good pal, the professor of pro wrestling. You know him, you love him. It is Chris Charlton. Chris, yoroshiku onegaishimasu.
Yoshiki.
And we have a lot to talk about heading into today. Good Lord, I mean, it feels like it's been a while since we've done one of these, but it's mostly because.
Yeah, because it has been.
It not only has it been, but also it feels even longer for me because the last time we did one, I was in Japan. So I haven't been at this setup doing a podcast with you. You know, I've thrown off the groove, you know?
Right. Well, because the last one we did was before King of Pro Wrestling. And then, so there was a big show then. And then there was, Final Homecoming. And all of these Tokyo Dome announcements. So, that. There has been a lot more in terms of pace and use, and so and now we're getting together. How you doing, man? It's flu season over here, so I'm constantly batting stuff away. Yeah, I'm wearing a mask on the train and stuff, you know. But we're all good. We're all good. We're getting set for World Tag League next week.
That's good. Yeah, you got kids, so you gotta really mask up and watch out.
Just
kids are monsters, man. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. I was one 10 minutes ago, so I totally get it.
Exactly. You still had you had you were physically smaller, but you had the same. That's how I envisage you. It's the exact same face. So you still had this massive bushy beard.
Right.
Going to elementary school.
I came right out of the wound with this beard. So there's no fighting that.
Right.
It's in the genetics, but we go right into what has been what feels like a million announcements now. I mean, we really only have about 6 to go through, but the Tokyo Dome continuing. I mean, this road that is being set is paved in gold in many different ways. Wrestle Kingdom 20 in the Tokyo Dome really starting to take shape, Chris, and a lot of that coming off the back of what you talked about earlier on. You said the last time that we did a podcast, we were leading up to King of Pro Wrestling, Konosuke Takeshita, a new IWGP World Heavyweight Champion. A month down the line now, Final Homecoming comes and goes, and one defense deep now is Konosuke Takeshita, now with a World Heavyweight Championship challenger, another champion in the form of a retained Yota Tsuji.
Yeah. So that was the first thing that came down. Well, I mean, I think Tsuji sort of made that challenge after the main event, after Takeshita defended against Hiroki Goto. But it all came, for me, very prophetic after the semi-main, right, where Tsuji defends that global championship against Tanahashi. And then the I don't know whether you would call it a passing of the torch or active taking of the torch of Tsuji saying to Tanahashi, hey, don't worry, leave New Japan to me. And Tanahashi sort of entrusting Tsuji with that task. I think, there is, it continues this idea of Takeshita, still being New Japan Pro Wrestling contracted or triple contracted, but being viewed very much as an outsider. And Tsuji kind of sees himself as I guess the whether he's the savior of New Japan or whether he feels I'm the one that's going to bring New Japan into a new era while at the same time throwing back to something old in reference to the actual physical title belt, right?
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting, we talk about the way that some people try to connect history to the present and then into what they want to look for the future to be. And Yota Tsuji invoking the words of Antonio Inoki whenever he was making comment to Hiroshi Tanahashi about leaving Hontai, or really leaving New Japan, not Hontai itself, but New Japan itself, to Yota Tsuji, a very different path that Tsuji looks to walk on the road to the Tokyo Dome. Not exactly the clean-cut, white hat wearing champion that the way that we've seen men like Hiroshi Tanahashi and some before come and go, but I'm very interested to see, as it is a double gold dash. Is that what we're calling it again? Double championship matchup.
No.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then let's kill that terminology. I'm tired of seeing it. I'm seeing it on Twitter. I'm seeing it everywhere.
Yeah, because I mean he's been Suji was very clear that he doesn't see this as a unification. Takeshita doesn't see it as a unification, right? So I think we need to make it very very clear on that point. This isn't, even though both titles are on the line, this isn't a unification match. It won't be a unification match. Takeshita sees this as, well, if I am the world heavyweight champion and I win the global title, that just means that I will have more title defenses. I will take both the schedules. Yoda Tsuji, his goal, and as I said, sort of looping things back to the way things used to be, wants to, and he's been, he was speaking about this even last year, if you remember, when he won the New Japan Cup and challenged Tetsuya Naito. That he wants to win the World Heavyweight Championship so he can split it into its constituent parts, that being the IWGP Heavyweight Championship and possibly the IWGP Intercontinental Championship. So I think Yoda Tsuji being this symbolic, and you say the white hat, but he wears the white belt while at the same time wearing red and black. I think like there's a lot of comparisons that people have made for a long time between Tsuji and Shinsuke Nakamura, but like in the end, trying to do perhaps what Tetsuya Naito had a vision for but was unable to do. Is something that's at the heart of what I think Yoda Tsuji is thinking. Naito was always opposed to the idea of the World Heavyweight Championship or unifying both of those championships, and Tsuji wanting to break those apart and at the same time sort of push things through to what he calls a new golden age. I think Tsuji, the difference is, I think both of those, Tsuji and Takeshita both, have this vision of like new golden eras with them at the top of it. But I think Takeshita has a more general view of professional wrestling as a whole, and Yoda Tsuji specifically, New Japan's part of it, which is probably will make Yoda Tsuji by and large the fan favorite in this match, right?
Yeah, it's really interesting to look at the motivations and what directions both men want to take New Japan Pro Wrestling, and see that there is almost, in its essence, a purity in both of them. Konosuke Takeshita saying that he wants to bring New Japan Pro Wrestling with AEW, with DDT, wherever Takeshita goes, he wants that place to be the standard bearer on a world stage. So why not bring the IWGP Gold even closer to the world stage with Takeshita at the helm of it? Meanwhile, I think that there has really been, especially with the production of AEW coming into the fold within the last decade, I truly believe there has been more of a focus for men like Yoda Tsuji, men of this generation, to almost have a bit more of a home steadfast on wanting to focus on mainland Japan, right? Tsuji really taking that into account with that no longer wanting the world heavyweight part of the heavyweight championship, wanting to potentially split up, try and bring back the old version of that IWGP heavyweight championship. So, I know that there's going to be people that are on both sides of that conversation. And I guess, Chris, the question that I want to pitch to you, and the question that I want to pitch to all of our lovely listeners out there in the world, is which side of that, really moral dilemma, I guess you'd have to look at it, do you find yourself on? Are you someone who wants to see the localization more of New Japan Pro Wrestling in the mainland, or do you want to see New Japan even higher in the upper echelon on a world stage?
Yeah, I think I can see both sides of the argument, and I think I can see where Takeshita's sort of philosophy is, but at the same time, it's this vision that Takeshita has of professional wrestling being at the heart of general society, and with, of course, Konosuke Takeshita being at the head of that. Whereas, Tsuji saying, I don't think Tsuji is saying let's shut off the world and purely base ourselves entirely in Japan. Tsuji's never specifically said that, and Tsuji, I think, if anything, has been very open about his role as a global champion in terms of expanding in different parts of the world. Although, I'm sure, Walker, this might upset you as an American. The world does not necessarily restrain itself purely to the United States of America.
You're kidding me.
And I think
you're kidding. Wow, news to me.
I think Tsuji represents that part of things of, well, let's build New Japan specifically on the world stage. So I think there's different visions of like is it the goal of growing New Japan Pro Wrestling on a worldwide stage, or is it a case of growing professional wrestling on a broader cultural stage? And I think there's valid arguments, and there'll be supporters on either side of that. But I think as someone who's who's in New Japan Pro Wrestling's employ, then I think Yoda Tsuji is representing New Japan Pro Wrestling in this front. What Takeshita represents is maybe something a little bit less certain, or maybe a little bit even beyond the scope of professional wrestling, you could argue. But I think as a New Japan guy, then I'm going to be behind Yota Tsuji at least to a certain extent in this matchup. And I think as well as someone that now in Tsuji, who returned from excursion in 2023, now here we are at the this part 2026, and like I think there's a lot of itchiness to come out of Wrestle Kingdom with a new guy, capital G guy, where obviously Hiroshi Tanahashi is not going to be a part of the landscape come January 5th and New Year Dash. So I think it's kind of, there's going to be a lot of pressure on Yota Tsuji to be the guy and to be the standard bearer for New Japan Pro Wrestling in 2026 and beyond, coming out of this Tokyo Dome card. And therefore, I think probably there's going to be this feeling of Yota Tsuji has to win, and now whether he can fulfill that promise or not, that's a different level, and I think we're going to get into the other contender of the main event. We're still not sure what's going to go on last, but there's a lot of parallels that you can draw. I don't think you can talk about this double title match without talking about Tanahashi's retirement match.
Sure, and that's going to be something that we get into in just a moment's time, in a very similar conversation there that we're going to have here with what I'm about to say, and that's that sometimes in big professional wrestling events, you look to your Wrestle Kingdoms and Tokyo Dome cards of the past, there is a clear-cut line between the morally good and the morally evil. We'll be talking about the literal evil in the Never Openweight Championship moments from now, but, this is a main event where I look at this one, Chris, and I go, if you're a Konosuke Takeshita fan, I see it as fully justified, and I can't pick apart your argument whatsoever. If you're a Yota Tsuji supporter, the exact same thing comes to mind. And I think for that reason, the fact that there is not a clear line between good and evil, so to speak, in this World Heavyweight and Global Heavyweight Championship matchup, it's going to make it a very divisive one. I think no matter the result, a very controversial one, and whether it is intended to or otherwise, will be felt on the worldwide stage when it comes to the heavyweight championship and global heavyweight titles.
Yeah, I think it's key with that there isn't necessarily a right answer, but I think the people that are behind either side very, very passionately, right? And I think that's the key aspect of this. And Takeshita said in that documentary after the G1, the formative sort of experience of Keiji Muto and Nobuhiko Takada in the Tokyo Dome with New Japan versus UWF, right? That kind of sports atmosphere of you have guys behind either team, but being so fervent and so passionate. I think having that heat in the Tokyo Dome is really going to be something.
Well, talking about heat in the Tokyo Dome, there very well could be some heading into this matchup. We are talking about the retirement road to Hiroshi Tanahashi coming to a complete and utter close, no matter the result. Hiroshi Tanahashi facing off one-on-one 10 years down the line from their last Wrestle Kingdom encounter against Kazuchika Okada. What an announcement. What a showcase back in Anjo City, Chris.
What a sudden reaction. And, it's one of those shows where, the fans could record clips on video posted on social media. So I've seen that moment 3, 4, 5 times now, and going back and just hearing that sudden this sharp intake of breath and scream, and also that pop, as we say, was huge, the first couple of times. The third time I watched it, I think yesterday for the fourth time, because we've just put you just put English commentary on there. And the fourth time I thought was just was I was able to see it with the very funny eyes because because there were people taking video in the crowd, right? So the coin drops, massive reaction, and the hard camera being where you could see the entrances, half the crowd on the hard camera side turning to the right, and then realizing that it was coming out the other side, which I thought was very funny. So
yeah.
But
oh my gosh.
yeah, but Okada coming out the same outfit, the same shirt, that he wore Wrestle Kingdom 6, and saying the same lines of congratulations, you must be tired, and with Gedo with the bandana that it's always a mystery of how he can see underneath. That was it was a great throwback moment, but Okada making it very clear that that the nostalgia trip was one and done. It'll be a different Okada in the Tokyo Dome.
Right, AEW's Kazuchika Okada, and for those who do not follow All Elite Wrestling, Chris, I guess, can you talk to us a little bit about the shift that Okada has undergone ever since joining the AEW roster, becoming the AEW Unified Champion at the expense of Kenny Omega, and really being a part of, I guess, the quote-unquote elite?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's a very different attitude that Okada's taken ever since, really since day one. When he went over to America, and certainly not, Okada, I don't think Okada ever really pandered to the New Japan Pro Wrestling fans, but he became an iconic figure to the New Japan Pro Wrestling fans, and therefore lived up to that. I think maybe there's something in Okada that probably took great delight in being in a not entirely new environment, but a different environment. To where he didn't have that pressure of living up to an iconic status or a certain status behooving of a champion, you could say. And certainly that has come out in his attitude over in AEW, I guess. And something that he's saying we would see in the Tokyo Dome on January 4th. So I think we are going to see a very different match to the kind of matches that we have had before. And I think as well, both of them, both Tanahashi and Okada were talking in that press conference about, well, there's no bones about the fact that they've wrestled one another many a time, right? I think 14, something like that. And they've wrestled each other for the last time before, because when Okada was leaving New Japan Pro Wrestling back in February 2024, right? You and I were there in Osaka. And it felt then, okay, this might be the last time. There was Battle in Valley, I believe, that the year before that in San Jose, where it was the last time they wrestled for the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship. But I think there was always something different with Tanahashi and Okada in the Tokyo Dome. And I think that is the standard that we're looking at. And that's the standard that both of those athletes were looking at and are looking at, if that makes sense. I kind of feel always what springs to mind, and Okada brought it up as his favorite career match to date, was the Wrestle Kingdom 10 match in 2016. And there it was a case where Tanahashi was the G1 winner. He was the challenger going into the main event of the Tokyo Dome. But in a very, very real sense, he was the champion and Okada was the challenger. Because Okada had never beaten Tanahashi in that spot, in those other two prior Tokyo Dome main events. And it wasn't until he could beat Tanahashi in that spot that he became the guy, capital G, right? That was the defining moment for him. And I think that's why you wound it back to a year prior, Wrestle Kingdom 9 in 2015. And even though Okada would swear up and down that he wasn't crying as he walked out the Tokyo Dome, he definitely was crying walking out the Tokyo Dome. You had that right. Iconic visual because he had been a champion, but he hadn't beaten, he had been a champion, he had won in the Tokyo Dome and defended the championship in the Tokyo Dome, defended against Tetsuya Naito the year before, but he hadn't beaten Tanahashi in that spot, in the biggest spot that you can have. And that was that's what crushed him the year before. That's what made him the year after. And now here we are. I think although you can look at the records, and Tanahashi made this point, and say, well, Okada's won their last 4 matches against one another, and this, that, and the other. But Tanahashi is 2-1 in the Tokyo Dome, and that's what counts. And I think that's what will count mentally, at least, for Tanahashi in this spot on January 4th.
Well, I think it's going to be a very interesting visual to see Kazuchika Okada not exactly in his purest Rainmaker form as New Japan Pro Wrestling fans will remember him, but rather as the supposedly heading in January 4th, at the very least, as far as we know, AEW Unified Champion, right? He said himself that the coin drop very well won't be heard on January 4th, 2026 if Okada gets his way. And to me, this speaks of not only a dawning of a new era here in New Japan Pro Wrestling. We're saying goodbye to a man who has helped define this sport for the past 20-odd years or so, but also we're saying hello for the first time in New Japan Pro Wrestling to this new version of Kazuchika Okada. It's almost a way of, putting the flag back at the top of the mountain, so to speak, and then he's going to go the hell back home to AEW and just leave the flag in the sand. And I don't know. I think there's a really interesting conversation to have about that, Chris.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think, this is what I alluded to earlier on. You cannot talk about this retirement match and you can't talk about the double title match with Tsuji and Takeshita separately. You have to put them together in the same spot. I think the bookmakers will say Okada is the favorite going into this match with Tanahashi, right? I don't think you would argue against that point, although you can't discount Tanahashi. And Tanahashi, Tana's a man with an ego, and he doesn't want to lose his last match. I think he wants that vision, especially if that match is last, right? And Tanahashi sending everybody home. Can you imagine how long the air guitar solo is going to be? We were laughing, we were joking. Where was it? I think we were in Ota, right, in the G1, and Tana took like about 3-4 laps around the building, shook everybody's hands.
Yeah, that's it.
You were trying to get out there because you had the bus to catch. I think we're gonna have going on 45,000 people in the Tokyo Dome, and Tana's gonna want to shake everybody's hand. But here you have. So let's suppose. Let's suppose win, lose, or draw. I think to me the question is, one of the closing images that we have coming out of the Tokyo Dome, and obviously a big closing image will be Tanahashi, the Ice Damas, and everything else. I think whether we have the retirement ceremony where that happens, I'm not sure what the lay of the land is in that respect. But let's look at Okada as well. And let's look at Okada in the context of Tsuji versus Takeshita. Because let's say Takeshita retains the World Heavyweight Championship. He's also the Global Heavyweight Champion. Takeshita's issues with Okada over in AEW and this sort of rupture in the Don Callis family, very, very well documented. And that would be, I am sure that neither man would give up the opportunity if given that that they're able to bring that aspect and that kind of hostility into a different venue, a different arena in a different country in the world, and potentially without, say, Don Callis being a peace breaker, right? He's been the voices in both of their ears, and I don't know. Don might be in Japan, he might not be. But if the cats are away, then the mice would play in that regard. So that's one aspect of it. Now let's say Yoda Tsuji defeats Konosuke Takeshita, and Yoda Tsuji on that night brings back the iconic IWGP Heavyweight Championship, the V4 Heavyweight Championship, the championship that is absolutely synonymous with Kazuchika Okada. And Okada is, a lot of people will say, and I believe, the greatest IWGP Heavyweight Champion of all time. So here you have Tsuji re-invoking that belt, holding that title in the Tokyo Dome. And you remember as well as I do being in Sapporo when Okada wrestled what we thought was his last match in New Japan Pro Wrestling, and Yoda Tsuji getting in Okada's face at ringside and saying, "Are you really okay with the way you left?" So I think there would, certainly if Tsuji wins the championship, I think he would have a very big bone to pick with Kazuchika Okada. Whether Okada would be willing to take that bone or not, I don't know. So I think we have to see those two matches as a set, let alone the fact that Tanahashi entrusting New Japan Pro Wrestling to Yoda Tsuji. I think that there is too much smoke to the barbecue, so to speak, when it comes to the Tokyo.
Yeah, it's a really interesting conversation to go deeper in even there. It wouldn't be the first time that the World Heavyweight or Heavyweight Championship has not main evented the Tokyo Dome, and that was a situation also involving Kazuchika Okada and Hiroshi Tanahashi, right?
It was put to Okada in an interview that's yet to be public, but here's the tea, so to speak. But it was put to Okada. What do you think about having a fan vote? And I think it's such a unique prospect because Okada, has been Okada and Tsuji both as well. They've been very vocal about the IWGP title should absolutely go on last. But here you have a situation where, yes, the IWGP title should absolutely go on last. At the same time, it's Tanahashi's retirement. That should absolutely go on last. So it's another one of those where there isn't a clear-cut right or wrong answer. I think it's interesting you look at that from a television prospect as well. Obviously live in English and NJPW worldwide. Also, Wrestle Kingdom is going to be aired on paid satellite TV live as it happens. But you also have for the first time since 2002, a prime time special airing of Wrestle Kingdom. So here you would look at that and you would go, well, would there be a lot of people watching that in prime time, their first taste of New Japan Pro Wrestling perhaps in a long time, because they're curious about Aaron Wolf's debut, because they're curious about Hiroshi Tanahashi's retirement, and therefore, if Tanahashi retires, Yoda Tsuji and Konosuke Takeshita goes on last, might they tune out perhaps? Would Tsuji and Takeshita gain, from a boring statistic, rating standpoint? I know ratings talk is the absolute dearth of pro wrestling conversation, certainly over in the West. But I think there's different arguments that you can make from a business perspective, from a fan perspective, from an audience perspective, from being a Tanahashi fan to being a fan of Yoda Tsuji to being a fan of everything that New Japan represents. I think that there isn't a right or wrong answer, Walker, and I think I'd be interested to hear what you think should go on last.
Yeah, it's a weird one because, of course, the attachment to Hiroshi Tanahashi and what he's meant to this organization, what he's meant to pro wrestling overall, versus what we call the sanctity of the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship. I mean, even within this last calendar year, there have been World Heavyweight title matches that did not take place in the main event of an NJPW event. Those namely taking place back right here in the United States where I'm at currently. And I know that there was a lot of hell raised about that from, a lot of our core audience, and also a lot of conversation about that amongst all our locker rooms here in New Japan.
From Tsuji. Tsuji said he would boycott, any event that didn't have the IWGP title on last, as long as he's IWGP champion.
Yeah, but having that conversation when it comes to Tsuji's own personal attachment to Tanahashi, though, and what Tanahashi has meant to Tsuji, bringing him into the fold, you have to wonder, and this would be a question to pitch to Yoda Tsuji in an interview or in a press conference if there's any media listening. You might want to ask about Tsuji's opinion on that, because there's personal pride versus the love and adoration for someone who paved the way for you to be here. And that can be a really difficult thing to try and balance, especially, you're not just talking about your public perception or your career. You're talking about your paycheck. right? You're talking about the winner's purse, and you were talking about a little main event bonus, so to speak, that you'll get from a Wrestle Kingdom 20 main event. So, especially in a victorious standing, no matter who that is, Tsuji or Takeshita. So, either way, the one thing that we're not going to be able to dispute, Chris, is that this is one everyone needs to be watching. No matter what's in the main event, what's in the semi-main event, you could put Tanahashi and Okada in the opener for all I care. Put him on the kickoff in the Rambo. It's going to make some money. And maybe not in the Rambo, but either way, it's going to be a money matchup, and everyone needs to keep their eyes on it.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is obviously the first announcement of Tsuji and Takeshita. That initial press conference, Tanahashi opening the numbers of what I think on that day it was something like 31,700 or so. Here we are on November 14th as we're talking, and presumably I guess we'll put this up on Monday, so let's say the 17th. We don't have a public number for you to say on this podcast. It's not the place to say it. But I will say we are much, much closer to 40,000 than we are 30,000. And we're, obviously that speaks to how much this is a money match. I wonder if I can direct this down a little bit further down the beaten path here when you made the indication, or you made that comment about the big payday in the Tokyo Dome. Because as of right now, somebody that had the potential for a champion's payday, but has thus far rejected the opportunity of a champion's payday is Doki. And here we have, as of right now, as of Anjo, Doki, it was Taiji Ishimori pinned Sho in a tag team match and said, hey, I'm not done with you, Doki, when it comes to how Doki and Sho won Super Junior Tag League against Ishimori and Robbie X. And then, so I want a shot. Doki's backing away, bumps into El Desperado, says, well, I haven't forgotten about how you took the IWGP Junior Heavyweight Championship. Kosei Fujita, who was, to loop us back round to the start here, was out with flu in Anjo, but, saying, he's been very vocal, very, very vocal about what he wants to do to Doki. And it seemed in the moment, well, we're going to have a four-way. And then Doki saying, you can have your four-way, but put Sho in there and make it number one contenders match because you haven't proven yourself as challengers to me. Now, I think it's very strange for someone with the ego of Doki, who proclaims himself a deity, and this, that, and the other, and certainly enjoys some money. I have a hard time believing that Doki won't be part of Wrestle Kingdom 20 in some form or other, right?
Yeah, it's talking about it right now. I mean, you think back to the last Tokyo Dome appearance for Doki, didn't exactly go anywhere close to plan, right? And you have to wonder if there's maybe a little bit of a sore spot there for Doki. And in my mind, I mean, I'm no professional athlete by any stretch of the definition, but if I were and I had suffered a career-altering injury in the Tokyo Dome, maybe I personally would want to be going in as a champion and almost right that wrong, right? Especially sharing a ring with El Desperado, whether it be a singles or a four-way or whatever. The man who was on the other side of that equation back in early 2025.
Or, to the flip side of that same coin, do you feel as someone, I think one thing that sort of bonds all the different members of House of Torture in one way or the other is a profound insecurity. Like, do you feel that perhaps Doki has a hang-up, a little bit of a phobia about competing, a little bit of a complex about competing in the Tokyo Dome on that stage and with that pressure? Maybe that's the way he's acted since, I will say this, you kind of see every now and then you have the AI slot post on Twitter that's like, what's the opinion that you have that has everybody out there with pitchforks and what have you, right? I'll tell you this, my version of that is Doki and Sho are a hell of a tag team. And I think they proved that through Super Junior Tag League. In being undefeated, but clearly showing the very essence of House of Torture in so doing. In terms of, there's always that pro wrestling philosophy, the philosophy that Tanahashi has long had, right, of bringing out the very best of your opponents and highlighting how great they are in the ring before being that little bit better than them and winning, right? Is at the very essence of pro wrestling as a sport. And I think what we saw all the way through, certainly through their defenses against Robbie Eagles and Kosei Fujita, against Desperado and Kukai, and then in that amazing final with Robbie X and Taiji Ishimori, certainly we saw absolutely the very level best of each of those teams. But when it came down to being a little bit better than them and winning, they didn't have the confidence, the self-confidence, the confidence in the self to be able to do that. And therefore, every single time it's been that black mirror to the head, the roll up, handful of tights, feet on the ropes, winning in any which way that they can. So yeah, maybe it is a little bit of a mental block around Doki that's subconsciously preventing him from setting foot in the Tokyo Dome.
Well, Chris, we're missing a major point here, and that's the idea that maybe, just maybe, Doki is a double champion, making all the paydays that he is right now. Just wanted to get his good pal Show in on a Tokyo Dome match and get him a little bit of a higher rate there. No, I mean, I think that you bring up a great point there when you talk about this idea that Doki maybe has a lot of reservation about competing in the Tokyo Dome. I'd argue as well, maybe Doki has heavy reservation about competing in a multi-man matchup. Just in general for the IWGP Junior Heavyweight title. He wouldn't have to get pinned or submitted to lose the championship. In some ways, you can see it as a incredibly strategic move just to hold on to the title for another month, depending on, when this championship challenge would actually take place. But, as it stands right now, though, El Desperado, Kosei Fujita, Taiji Ishimori, and Sho, what do things look like if Sho ends up winning this matchup? I mean, you think we'll really see Sho versus Doki for the junior title? I just can't see it.
Well, and how that plays out, I think maybe, well, let's face it, I think you remember when Doki wrestled Sho for the junior heavyweight championship before? It was 3 minutes in and out, and I think I've felt that Sho was offered to Doki as part of the deal, because I think it's pretty clear that Kanemaru was the guy that brought Doki into House of Torture. And I think it was, at that point, here's the sweetener for you, because as long as you're with Doki, you are going to have this endlessly loyal puppy in the form of Sho, because he has been thoroughly, humbled by you in the past. And he will constantly do whatever it takes to make sure that you're successful. And I think, there's that conversation to maybe have for another day. Maybe it's a New Year's Dash. Maybe it's a new beginning. Maybe, who knows? But, would that be the moment? Should Sho be victorious in the Tokyo Dome? Would that be the moment where Sho finally becomes his own man, or whether he would still stay as Doki's lapdog? We would, it's a big hypothetical. But certainly I think Doki would do, if he is not involved in his own way in the Tokyo Dome, and I think that's still something remains to be seen, but Doki would do everything in his power to make sure that Sho is victorious, although House of Torture will be doing everything in their power to make sure someone else is victorious in the Tokyo Dome.
Yeah, and we're going to move into talking right about that right now. A match originally announced as a special singles match between the King of Darkness, Evil, and the gold medal Olympic athlete that is Aaron Wolf. But, well, things certainly have changed now with Evil spray painting the never open weight title gold, proclaiming it as his own gold medal, and now being willing to put it on the line in Aaron Wolf's debut matchup. Aaron Wolf will make his pro wrestling debut in a singles title match in the Tokyo Dome, Chris.
Yeah, Evil sort of said, well, I beat you, then I've beaten an Olympic gold medalist, and I've put my own quote-unquote medal on the line, then that shows, I'm better than any Olympian ever, So here you had Aaron Wolf, who's, humble as ever, and kind of saying, well, I'm still a trainee. I've never had a pro wrestling match. I certainly have no right to say, to challenge for a championship. But at Evil's behest, this is what it is. So far, every single one of these interactions, Evil's been dumped on his ass by Aaron Wolf, But, here we have this situation where, yes, it is the Tokyo Dome. It is, your debut, your very, very first pro wrestling match in a high stakes championship opportunity. I think for that, in that respect, our minds flash back. You and I once did an archive call back in 2004. Josh Barnett's first ever pro wrestling match was wrestling Yuji Nagata for the IWGP Heavyweight Championship. A very different champion in Nagata, and a very different, to Evil, certainly. But yeah, I mean, there's so much intrigue in terms of what does it look like when the rubber hits the road with Aaron Wolf, and is Evil overlooking the Olympic judo gold medalist? Because yes, of course, this is pro wrestling. It's very different fields, but you certainly can't overlook the fact that Aaron Wolf's one of the most dangerous men on the planet.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. I think that there is a very interesting way to look at Aaron Wolf when it comes to not just, okay, you're going to debut in the Tokyo Dome, you're going to have one match, that's all fine and dandy, but this is a man who is set to become a full-time member of the New Japan Pro Wrestling roster. I think that my head takes me to wonder, what the hell does Aaron Wolf look like in an 8-man tag team matchup against, like, Tomoaki Honma, right? Like, there's a question to be had about how does Aaron Wolf fit onto this roster as stacked as we already see it. There is a way to ensure that you sit at the top of a division right off the back of your debut if you win the Never Openweight title, and that's great. But professional wrestling careers, especially a lot of those in Japan, built on this idea of overcoming adversity. We talk about testing spirit all the time. It's the one thing that they really do hammer down on in the Noge Dojo. And that's a dojo, by the way, that Aaron Wolf is getting training in right now, but not living in full time. Still has a life outside of the Noge Dojo that he tends to, as someone who has already been a public figure within the media, so to speak, Chris. So can you talk to me a little bit on your thoughts regarding that fact? Aaron Wolf has not been training nearly as long as, young lion Katsuya Morishima or Shomakato, for instance, but has been receiving this training on and off occasions, and now going to be taking on the Never Openweight champion. I mean, it almost feels like an unwinnable situation for anyone that isn't the baddest man on the planet.
Well, true, yeah. I mean, obviously he's an Olympic athlete. I mean, he certainly had dedication to training and to combat sport. His entire life, pretty much, right? But yeah, I do understand your argument of pro wrestling being a different field, and it is going to be an intriguing set of circumstances come after the Tokyo Dome, as you said. I think we've long sort of speculated how the other young lions feel about Aaron Wolf. I'd like, next time I see Yuto Ice, I would like to hear what Yuto Ice thinks about Aaron Wolf. So I think, from here, the journey gets to be very, very interesting. Nothing tests the spirit, Walker. Nothing tests adversity like being put with House of Torture. So we'll see whether Aaron Wolf overcomes or not, and then, well, I mean, you would say certainly in this environment, Evil is again, probably the odds maker's favorite. But how much of Aaron Wolf will be able to be seen before the odds get too much, or is he able to overcome those odds? I mean, I think there's just a lot of questions, and having a lot of questions is always a good thing in this business.
Well, we're going to have a lot of questions as well heading into yet another double championship matchup. It's the final conversation piece regarding Wrestle Kingdom 20 at this point in time. And I think it's going to be the one, Chris, that you and I are going to have to work the hardest on the broadcast to contextualize the best, with us not really showcasing, and that us being New Japan Pro Wrestling, not really showcasing women's wrestling as much as some might prefer. But the IWGP Women's Championship versus the NJPW Strong Women's Championship on the line. Shuri, the IWGP, Saya Kamitani, the Strong Women's title. And this is going to be one to definitely keep your eye on heading in on January 4th.
Yeah, it's interesting. My mind sort of flashed back to, and this will be the first time they've gone one-on-one since 2021, I believe. And it was the very first time that because Stardom had these showcase matches on a couple of Wrestle Kingdoms before in 2020 and 2021, and they were always non-televised, and those those archives not available. But the very first time that they were part of a New Japan event, it was part of the kickoff, and it was the Wrestle Grand Slam in MetLife Dome in September of 2021. And that was the first time that we had those matches on New Japan World. And it was Shuri and Julia against, I believe, Momo Watanabe and Saya Kamitani. So, here you had, from that sort of start and the connection sort of early on between Stardom and New Japan Pro Wrestling. And now, here, I would have to say that the biggest height of that collaboration to date is very, very significant. Here you have Shuri, who is, I think that the model of what IWGP is in terms of the original sense of it, in terms of competition. I think Sari as well, and that's what made the Sari Shuri match very appealing. But certainly, I think you could say Shuri has a sort of innocuous mindset. I think perhaps you could say, in terms of her approach, in terms of her experience, and in terms of her ability as a competitor. On the other hand, in Saya Kamitani, no doubt a star, and a capital S star, and somebody that has done so much for Stardom in the year of 2025, and so much for professional wrestling, for women's professional wrestling in 2025, with the mainstream media presence that she's been able to cultivate, and the attention that she's had. And now here we have an awful lot of attention being focused in on the Tokyo Dome. I mean, Saya being having that very wry comment of, well, it was a rival network that had the first sort of terrestrial women's wrestling match broadcast in X number of years. And so if TBS doesn't want to lose out, then they've got to make sure that the double women's championship match is on the televised portion of Wrestle Kingdom 20.
Well, there's no doubt that Saya Kamitani is one who has been chasing the bright light. She's been on daytime talk show in Japan, did a season or a stretch or something along that line, one of the major broadcasts. That match against Hanan, by the way, in TBS Studio, one of the most highly viewed, I don't know what the phrasing would be, syndicated national television programs to show wrestling in some time. Whatever that metric may be, there's a lot to talk up about Saya Kamitani when it comes to that star power, but a lot to talk up on the Stardom side of the conversation as well. And this is stuff that has been outside of New Japan Pro Wrestling broadcasting. Of course, we saw Shuri at King of Pro Wrestling in Ryogoku win the IWGP Women's Championship from Saudi back on October 13th. But it would be a month prior to that, Saya Kamitani would put the World of Stardom title on the line against Azumi for the Strong Women's Championship. And it would be Kamitani that would retain the Stardom World title and gain the Strong Women's Championship. Now, one defense of both of those titles on the line against Momo Watanabe a few days ago. I know that you got the opportunity to watch that match yourself, and there was a lot of fire out of Kamitani, a lot of fire out of Shuri in the challenge issued here. But you got to know going into the Tokyo Dome as well that jam-packed week of wrestling action is going to continue to heat up as it goes for Kamitani, Chris, because she doesn't just have January 4th to worry about. December 29th, Stardom Dream Queendom, live with English coverage on pay-per-view. Saya Kamitani battles Saudi Ano for the World of Stardom title. So, my question is, when do the lights get too bright, and when does Saya Kamitani start to burn out? Is there a period where Saya Kamitani starts to burn out, and could this be the most high-pressure situation of Kamitani's career where we see it happen?
Yeah, and I think for someone who visually looks more like to a New Japan Pro Wrestling fan, I think somebody that's visually, and maybe in the context of the unit that she's in with Hate over in Stardom, that maybe she might bring Evil closer to mind than Hiroshi Tanahashi. But I think within that being said, she's been able to survive and thrive in that mindset. I think she is more interested, it seems to me, with being on the big stage, with being and having the lights upon her, and competing in that realm. For her, it seems to me that the Wrestle Kingdom stage is the prize. Whereas for Shuri, I think her mind is predominantly set on the IWGP, retaining the IWGP Women's title, and adding the New Japan Strong title to that, perhaps unifying the two, perhaps is an added side benefit. But for Shuri, who had worked for the greater part of a year to become IWGP Women's Champion, and then to lose it so quickly, was somewhat mentally devastating to her. Now to have that for a second time, wanting to make sure that she has a champion's road, in her words, to continue, I think that is key. So yeah, I mean, a lot either way, someone's going to leave with at least 2 belts, right? Saya Kamitani might personally leave with 3 belts, and I think then we have a collection of a belt collector, if you will.
Oh wow! I've never heard of one of those.
There's more than
before.
one of those. Yeah, well, yeah, there's more than one in the women's wrestling space. So we'll see who comes out on top. And I'd be intrigued to see who's watching that match as well.
Well, wrestling fans, if you want to get your tickets for Wrestle Kingdom 20 in the Tokyo Dome, January 4th, 2026, you're going to have to get them a whole lot faster than that. You're going to need them now. You got to get them now. Log in now. NJPW1972.com. There's a banner at the top of your screen. It's all for tickets. You can find tickets. You can get them. It's going to be an incredible night. You can sit right next to Chris Charlton all night. You can hear him. It's going to be an incredible time. You won't hear me, though. You can never hear me. That is a bold-faced lie. We're going to move right on in, Chris, from talking about Wrestle Kingdom 20 in the Tokyo Dome, where fans should get their tickets right now at NJPW1972.com, and talk all about World Tag League 2025. We're going to hit on this year's World Tag League, 16 teams across Block A and Block B, some teams that you'd expect, and a lot of teams that are making debut entries, a lot of athletes making debut entries into this year's tournament, including in B Block, the reigning IWGP Tag Team Champions. Looking to shake things up are the Knockout Brothers, Oscar and Yuto Ice.
Well, here you have undefeated as a team, and the IWGP Tag Team Champions. Obviously last time we had the Tag Champions win World Tag League was Bishamon a couple of years ago. I think if there's any team that you look at and you go, yeah, they could do it, then I think certainly the Knockout Brothers can. I think it's pretty hard to see anybody that can beat Oscar and Yuto Ice at this point. I think one thing that we have really seen is how they benefit one another in terms of accentuating one another's strengths or hiding one another's weaknesses. I think we saw that when Oscar wrestled Shota Umino and Ice wrestled Yuya Uemura in Korakuen Hall, and then again when Ice had that match with Tanahashi in Anjo, where as singles competitors both clearly very good, a lot of upside, not quite there. But when you put the two of them together, they're just unstoppable. And I think that's what makes a great tag team, in my opinion.
Well, it is going to be their first ever run in the World Tag League this year. And as IWGP Tag Team Champions, it's always a difficult thing to be any form of champion at a tournament, especially a round-robin tournament. You're going to face a lot of different competition all across your block and hopefully compete against the top point scorers in the opposite block, right? But as it stands, the Knockout Brothers, the two men that are going to be gunned after the most. I don't want to read through every single team, NJPW1972.com if you want to find your information here, but just a couple of the highlight teams to talk about, like a couple of teams that we haven't seen in a few years, like Alex Zane and Lance Archer coming back for World Tag League. You have David Finlay and Hiromu Takahashi. I would love to get your thoughts just collectively on all of the War Dogs unaffiliated teams that we're seeing. Finlay and Hiromu, Shingo Takagi and Drilla Maloney. Give me your thoughts here.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that first main event in Korakuen Hall. You got Drilla and Shingo against Tsuji and Gabe Kidd. Hear that. Tsuji and Shingo, we had a couple of those all LIJ 6-man tags But this is as close as we've gotten to a Tsuji versus Shingo singles match since Tsuji was a young lion. So I think that aspect of those collisions is going to be great to see. And of course, like Gabe and Maloney was that match that both of them were so looking forward to in the G1, and that being denied them. So I think that's going to be the great sort of flip side to that coin. With Tsuji and Gabe, obviously mutual respect is big with them, but I think so too is the fact that it's got to be eating a Gabe Kidd that Tsuji is doing everything that he wanted to do at the Tokyo Dome. And I think whether that sort of comes to the fore, whether egos come to the fore, and really it's interesting to think about what the motivating factor is for Gabe Kidd, and perhaps this is an aspect of Gabe being as potentially successful with Yota Tsuji as he can be through World Tag League, with potentially on the table should Tsuji be the champion coming out of Wrestle Kingdom, but maybe Tsuji would give first shots to Gabe Kidd, and Gabe Kidd would have a valid argument to be able to challenge for that title. So I think that's an aspect to look at. Shingo and Drilla Maloney, I think that's a dark horse. Clearly they've got similar mentalities, similar approaches, similar styles, similar motivations. I kind of think that might be a dark horse for A Block to come through and win, potentially make their way into the final. And then the biggest question mark though, is David Finlay and Hiromu. I think we're still just not really clear what motivated Finlay to hold the hand out. And will we see that through World Tag League? Maybe not. Maybe we'll see it in how he teams with Hiromu Takahashi.
Yeah, it's so fun to watch different members of the War Dogs, and I guess you could call it the speed to which they're getting comfortable with members of the unaffiliated, and vice versa. There's been a little bit of confusion and a slight hostility with like Shingo Takagi and different members of the War Dogs in the beginning stages, but certainly those are being worked through as time goes on. Meanwhile, you have men like Oscar who want nothing to do with young Lion Daikin a guy, for instance. In his corner, but following the orders of David Finlay. Gato, taking really, really well with Hiromu Takahashi in Super Junior Tag League. So, this is going to be more of what I imagine is the feeling out process all across the board in Block A and Block B for the War Dogs and unaffiliated. But there has to be an end game to this, and I just can't put my finger on what that looks like.
Yeah, well, we'll have to see one way or the other. I'm also, you skipped over Monster Source, Lard Toucher, and Alex Zane. I'm very much looking forward to having them back over. I'm the first night on World Tag League, because you'll be joining midway through the tour. So first night, I'm going to be joined by Alex Zane on color commentary. And I think I would take great delight in saying to Alex Zane that I feel Zane coming over for World Tag League just feels like, it's the start of the Christmas season. I can put my Christmas tree up.
That's right.
When Alex Zane comes, he looks like a Christmas tree as well.
That's true. A wonderful ornament. Those trophies are a little too heavy to hang on the tree, but maybe a topper. I don't know. Lance Archer and Alex Zane are going to be a fun pairing, though. Haven't seen, I believe it was my first World Tag League I got to call in 2023. Alex Zane and Lance Archer competed in. And it's their second entry as a team overall, first time since then. So we're still to see what a new Don Callis family emboldened Lance Archer looks like alongside Alex Zane. We're gonna have to stay tuned to find out about that. Of course, along with the mention of the AEW regime, it was an unfortunate injury that took place at an AEW event for one Tomohiro Ishii that seemingly has kept Ishii from competing alongside his tag team partner in Taichi in this tournament. And oh my gosh, I wish I could be a fly on the wall when Taichi saw the announcement for his World Tag League partner as Satoshi Kojima, Chris.
Yeah, I imagine. I wonder what the fly in the wall of the locker room and what the sort of team talks are like. Hey, I wonder what the team talks are like between El Desperado and Shuji Ishikawa. It's like
So there, you and I had, before the official announcements came, you and I had heard slight rumor of just an unusual quote unquote name to team alongside El Desperado, and I was racking my brain. I was trying to. I went through a million different names, and none of them were Shuji Ishikawa. So the former All Japan Triple Crown champion competing alongside Desperado, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is Desperado's first World Tag League entry overall, correct?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
As a junior heavyweight, and it's interesting to see Hiromu Takahashi, an eternal rival of Desperado, win in the heavyweight World Tag League just 1 year ago with Tetsuya Naito as LIJ. So, maybe luck might be on the side of the juniors that are adding a couple extra kilograms to the weight to compete in this year's World Tag League. I'm interested to see what happens with Ishikawa.
Definitely. It's going to be interesting. I think we can say that. Never a dull day.
A couple of other, World Tag League, consistent competitors. You have Ren Narita and Sonata representing House of Torture. Don Fale back alongside Evil representing House of Torture in Block A. Yujiro Takahashi and Chase Owens, a couple of glue guys for the house, really looking to hold things together. No shock to see Yano and Oleg together as well as a team. And, you continue to scroll up and down. Hiroshi Tanahashi and El Phantasmo, certainly one that we missed out on last year. And I think that it's like almost an open secret. Phantasmo's talked about it. Tanahashi, Jado, everyone involved in the conversation talked about it. Phantasmo missing out on last year's World Tag League due to a cancer diagnosis. But the initial team that was set for that tournament, ELP and Tanahashi, now being realized in what is set to be Tanahashi's final career tournament, and it's going to be alongside the NJPW World TV Champion.
Yeah, and that they're starting off in Fujisawa against Uemura and Umino, so that's a really cool matchup where it's always like past, present, and future of Hontai in one set. And we know how important Tanahashi has, been to sort of influencing Uemura specifically, and how important ELP has been to influencing Umino specifically. I'm really interested in that one. I think if you were looking walk on either side at this point, and I said, I'll say this year a little bit different. Is that it will be the top 2 point-scoring teams advancing to semifinals. So we have the finals in Kumamoto December 14th. But then before that, there'll be, those 2 events before that will be semifinal events. So there'll be one semifinal match in each, representing each side of the bracket. So if you were to pick 4, I would look at those groups and I would say out of B block, Knockout Brothers, as I'd said, and Umino and Uemura I definitely like on that side. And then, what do we have over in A block? You can't say no to Bishamon, right?
Right.
And then I would say Shingo and Driller. Those would be my final 4.
Wow. I think we have a similar final 4 to look at. I'm just looking at the list here. Bishamon was on my list in Block A. I think on the other side of that equation, I almost want to say Desperado and Ishikawa, just because who the hell is going to stop Shuji Ishikawa? The years may not be on the side when it comes to youth for Shuji Ishikawa, but the experience certainly is. And
I want to see Ishikawa and Don Fale.
Well,
that's gonna be
brother,
something.
do I have a World Tag League event for you to tune into?
Yeah.
We're going to be getting it. Hell, sure, Desperado and Ishikawa. Let's go Bishamon as well, and then I think the Knockout Brothers easily. And let's turn a look to TMDK. We haven't really talked about Sabre Jr. and Ryohei Oiwa. This will be their second time competing in this year's, or rather in a World Tag League alongside one another. Sabre Jr., a former IWGP Tag Team Champion. Meanwhile, Ryohei Oiwa has really been toiling away in the support category, you could say, for TMDK. But it's about to be time for Oiwa to start getting the wheels underneath him and challenging for more and more gold. See if something can come the way of the man.
Yeah, that's definitely a very solid pick for sure.
Well, okay, Chris, so out of the 4 that you listed, give me a final, give me a winner, and we'll check back in a month and figure out if you were on the right track.
I say Knockout Brothers do a clean sweep.
Wow.
I think they're gonna win undefeated.
Oh my gosh. I mean, you're a company guy, Chris, and I appreciate that about you. So you pulling for the champions that heavy. I mean, I can't blame you for it, though. The Knockout Brothers already undefeated heading into World Tag League ever since their return from excursion. A hard look. You know, it's really hard statistically, and I'm a guy who looks at the numbers, Chris. I know that it's hard to believe whenever we get to round robin tournament season that I believe in the numbers, but 2021, 2022, 2023, maybe even 2025 World Tag League winners, I think I have to go with Bishamon.
Ooh. Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
I mean, you know, is it the new most exciting option for some fans in professional wrestling? Absolutely not. But I think that Goto is desperately in need of rebound, especially after failing to capture the IWGP World Heavyweight title from Takeshita back in Gifu. Yoshihashi, you know, in need to get back into a prominent position. And meanwhile, you know, this is the big way to characterize this World Tag League, just as it is every year. This may be your final opportunity to make a statement heading into the Tokyo Dome. You won on that Tokyo Dome card. You better show out and impress and, well, maybe even win World Tag League this year.
Yeah, I mean, we would certainly we'd have to see. Obviously, it's not necessarily the case that you know, certainly a lot of people would have their eyes on the champions that are in this lineup. And say, well, that would preclude either, you know, one championship match or the other. You know, I mean, obviously last year we saw Tetsuya Naito and Hiromu Takahashi win, and then say they weren't going to have you know, an IWGP challenge right away. Instead, they decided to throw their hat in at the last possible minute to be a part of the three-way at Wrestle Dynasty last year. So yeah, certainly, you know, we're not sure when that championship match could come, and that just creates more opportunity for everybody all the way down the line. And I think it creates the need for more vigilance on the part of the champions in this affair.
Well, that's the conversation about World Tag League done and dusted, and that really is all the pieces of update and information that we have so far. We're going to be kicking off World Tag League November 20th, right, in Korakuen Hall. And you're going to be live there with English coverage every single night of World Tag League. Going to be live with English coverage all, 14, 18, 25 nights, whatever it is, we're going to be there. And I, for one, cannot wait to see who crowns himself the best heavyweight tag team in professional wrestling today. Before we go out here tonight, Chris, we have to do a little slight preview, a little slight peek at a night that I don't really know what we're going to make of. The Purge Night of Torture, going to be coming very, very soon. Just a matter of days away by the time that fans are hearing this. On NJPW World, exclusive on pay-per-view. Only a few number of matches announced. But, man, I cannot wait to see what the hell comes of Evil versus Shun Skywalker on the night.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, I mean, Shun Skywalker is someone that you know, doesn't play well with others in any conjunction. Here you have him in this House of Torture sandbox, I suppose, and then yeah, all manner of other things. Nobody, as we've said before, nobody quite does pay-per-view like NJPW World does. You know, they're always events that linger in the mind for a long time because, you know, oftentimes they're just so bizarre until you just don't know what to expect until you tune in. So yeah, certainly those that what does it look like with House of Torture having free reign? You know, I'm fortunate in a way that you'll be recording in post because I dare say I would be terminally harassed if I was inside Korakuen Hall with you know, Chase Owens and Don Farley having free reign. Doki.
Oh gosh,
free. They'd probably come and invade the commentary desk.
Well, even
there was once upon a time. There was once a time when Doki was a different individual, and you and I had conversations with Doki about doing guest color English and he seemed quite up for it. I think these days I think we would try and keep him as far away from the microphone as possible.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. There's going to be a lot to look forward to. Double duty Dick on the evening. Dick Togo going to be competing in the kickoff match against the long-lost brother, I believe, Hip Togo. That is certainly not Ryusuke Taguchi, no matter how hard you look for him. Milano Collection AT going to be in the corner of Hip Togo, by the way, as Sonata Collection SS, I've never heard of this one, in the corner of Dick Togo on the night. So, there's a lot of fun to be had. If you would like to support the house, if you would like to help build the mansion, so to speak, November 19th, NJPW World Pay-Per-View. Purchase the pay-per-view. Video on demand English coverage will be available within the coming hours following, and we cannot wait to present Purge Night of Torture, courtesy of New Japan Pro Wrestling on that night. And for that, Chris, any final thoughts, any final plugs? Where can the people find you? Where can the people find New Japan? We know all about that.
Well, I mean, they could, yeah. I mean, if you listening to this podcast, let's face it, you know where to find New Japan Pro Wrestling.
No,
but,
we're getting new viewers off of this one, Chris. It's in the Discovery, and they're clicking on it.
Yes, we are very, very close to selling out in the Tokyo Dome. Extremely close, and so that is a sensation. But of course, that means that we want everybody to be watching that worldwide, wherever they are in English on NJPW World. And well, before that, just announced the other day, January 3rd, special fan fest, as we typically have every single year. So the live press conference will be there as well, and you get to meet people if you're here in Japan for January 3rd. January the 2nd, you and I are going to be holding a live edition of this right here podcast. So yeah, that's it. Yeah, now the pressure's
on, brother.
So we're going to be hosting that from Ebrietis, thanks to Toriano, who's hosting us there. That event is now sold out, but we will probably. I will put you to employ, Walker, and make sure that at least the audio of that event is up the very same day. I think we're looking into streaming that live somewhere as well, whether that's Instagram or YouTube or somewhere. But we'll have solutions for you if you want to take that in and of the moment. And
Awesome. Well, that's going to be it. And, of course, as we get on the road to the Tokyo Dome, I'd love to give a special plug before we get out of here. December 29th, Stardom Dream Queendom 2025 will be live with English commentary on pay-per-view. Main event already confirmed, Saya Kamitani defending the World of Stardom title just days ahead of her Tokyo Dome bout for the IWGP and Strong Women's Gold against number one contender Saudi Ano. A lot of other matches soon to continue to be announced as we are getting right in the middle of the way for Goddesses of Stardom Tag League over in the Stardom ranks. So if you're looking to make a whole week, a whole month of pro wrestling, hell, make a whole year, come move to the country. Whatever you want to do, just make sure that you are purchasing your tickets for the best in professional wrestling, whether it's in women's action in Stardom or with the men over in New Japan Pro Wrestling. But for Chris Charlton, that's going to be us here in the booth. I've been Walker Stewart. This has been the official NJPW English Podcast. Go Kigenyo.
Sayonara.
Bye-bye.